So I'll try to keep it concise. I'm not gonna go through like the whole document because I just don't have time, and it makes me really tired every time I go through the documents, which means less. I'd have to do it on a show where I have other like less material in the other segments. Okay, so Pauline Hanson, let me get her the clip up. Okay, so Pauline Hanson tweeted about the Voice, which is this proposal to change the constitution in Australia and add something to it. So people, Australians have to vote for it. I think it was on, I think the date they picked was 14th October, but you might want to double check. So it's coming up in the next month, and everybody has to go and vote for it, and they need like a majority from like the states to vote yes. Um, but the problem with The Voice is there's not that many details about it uh, in the media. They say, oh, it's to give Aboriginal people a voice and representation in Parliament, blah, blah, blah. And they claim it's, there's varying claims like, oh, it's only one page document. But then when you look at the longer statement, it's, multiple pages and there's more details to it. And it's based off this statement that was written, I think, in 2017 called the Uluru Statement from the Heart. So that's only one part of it, but that's the main thing that's being pushed. So Pauline Hanson tweeted that the plan is actually more than just the voice. There's actually a few stages to it. And you also need to remember that we have Aboriginal representatives in Parliament and state. I think Jacinta, was it Price? Jacinta Price is one. There's a Green senator and another person as well. I can't remember their name. Who are supposed to also be representing Aboriginal interests, and they got voted in, right? So to change the constitution, I think it's a bit concerning because there's so much government funding pushing one side. It's kind of like when the marriage referendum thing went through Australia. There was a lot of funding for the yes to vote to change the definition of marriage. There was so much propaganda just pushing the one side. And that's kind of when things are a little bit sus, because why is the government going so ham for one side and not fairly showing both sides, right? It's a lot of marketing. I think that's when people need to turn on their critical thinking. Why is the government pushing one side so much? And they make it look one side look really good, and they call you a racist if you even ask questions. That's crazy. Okay, so here is one of the Yes campaigners, a video in the Yes campaign, talking about treaties. So there's more than meets the eye to the voice.
The Uluru Statement from the Heart is really a statement of reform written by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and it calls for three key changes. Firstly, a voice to Parliament that is enabled by the Australian Constitution. Secondly, a Makarrata Commission that does two things. One, sets up a process for treaty making across the country and supervises a process of truth-telling about Australian history.
So you can see the language is quite vague. He talks about Makarrata, doesn't define like what that is. A lot of the promotional videos I've seen have like mainly just talked about the voice, haven't mentioned Makarrata. And then they talk about truth telling. There's sometimes mentions of Makarrata, but they never define it or tell you what it is. So when you're trying to understand like what you're actually voting for, it's very difficult, and you have to like take time to go and read documents or go to the government website. And not everybody has time to do that, right? Okay, so I thought that I really liked the animation clip that Pauline Hanson made. It's from a series called Please Explain, and it's really funny. Like, I disagree, with some of the politics of like the left right wing paradigm, because I think it's just a farce. I think it's like a WWE fight. But I really like this cartoon because the series, because like they put a lot of jokes in there. It's really funny and it's quite true. Okay, so this is about the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which is that document I told you that they're kind of putting on the front of The Voice.
And so you can see, this is the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Nothing to worry about, it's just one page.
Hang on a second. That's dozens of pages.
No, it's not.
But Albo, I can see them there.
So the guy in the middle, if for people who aren't Australian, that's Anthony Albanese, and in the middle, and then Penny Wong's on the left, and I think that was it Lydia something. She's another I think Aboriginal or part Aboriginal politician, and Peter Dutton was the bald guy just now.
No, you can't.
Hang on, this says treaty is the culmination of our agenda.
You know what, Dutton? You're starting to sound a little unhinged.
Yeah, Dutton, you sound like a real cooker.
That's nothing more than a conspiracy theory, Dutton. Here's your
As usual.
tinfoil hat. Look, everyone, Dutton's a nut job. Nut job. Nut
They
job.
always do
Nut
this.
job.
Every time you question things,
Leave me alone. Oh,
they just
I swear
call
there
you
was more
names.
than one page. I'll get to the bottom of this.
It's the Sunny in Philadelphia meme.
The Uluru Statement is in fact 18 pages long.
18 pages long.
It's not one page, is it?
So the Uluru Statement, many people don't know, is 18 pages long.
Not so fast, Albanese.
Well, if it isn't the nut job.
Yeah, well, look what I found. A big folder full of irrefutable evidence.
It's too late, Dutton. The ABC, the NIAA, they've already confirmed it's one page. This is misinformation.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But what about those previous comments from the NIAA? What about those statements from Megan Davis and Pat Anderson? What about the content of the pages themselves?
Nothing but
Yeah.
conspiracies. Now, don't ever talk about those other pages again, or else we'll call you a nut job. Nut job. Nut job.
Every time.
Nut job.
Same.
Elbow, give me that statement. In full.
The Uluru Statement from the Heart is only one page, technically.
Regardless of the semantics and whether these pages actually form part of the statement, they certainly inform it.
No one can read these. I haven't even read them. No one can read them.
What is it that you don't want people to read about? The reasoning? The agenda?
So in an interview, Albanese actually said he hadn't read all the documents. I think it was something like he was saying like, "Oh, who has the time to do that?" or something. I'm like, dude, you're pushing this freaking referendum to the Constitution. It's pretty serious. Why are you pushing things you haven't even read? Insane. I don't know, he might be lying or whatever, but that's a crazy answer to say publicly.
Agenda? The roadmap?
I don't have to answer you. You're a crazy cooker.
Thank you, Miss Senator Hanson.
Someone's got to call out these nut jobs, Duffin.
It's just one page. Just one. I swear it's just one.
Yeah, who's the nut job, right? Lying about how many pages there are. Um, yeah, I really love those animations. When it first came out, I was so impressed because I was like, dude, it's so hard to find good artists and animators who aren't, super left in Australia. So the fact that, they were making this kind of stuff and they do a really good job, like storytelling and like the way they design the characters look like, very much like the person they're trying to portray. And it's funny and just good. It's very smart way of communicating, the message and getting the message out to people. Because, animation, that style especially is very time consuming to make or can be. And I just think it's a great way to take back some of that power from the mainstream media and to use, your own media to, push the narrative or to push the truth, right? That I think that's a problem in the right wing circles. Their media is just not to the same level as like the left. The left produces a lot of like movies and shows and stuff that are usually pretty good quality, decreasing in quality now, but for so long they had a monopoly on media. So it's really good to see like other perspectives, creating good media. I think it's great and funny. Okay, so I wanted to show. Okay, let me just switch screens for a sec. Okay, so this is from yeah, the AG's website talking about The Voice. And so they claim that the constitution alteration is just this we'll just amend this section and write a new chapter here. So it talks about recognizing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's voice. And in recognition of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia, 1, there shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. So that body may make representations to the Parliament and to the executive government of the Commonwealth on matters relating to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people. The Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have power to make laws with respect to matters relating to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, including its composition, functions, powers, and procedure. Right, so you can see like it looks like a very short amendment, and then they go on about like recognizing Aboriginal voices. So when this is all you're told that's getting amended in the Constitution, you're like, oh, that's not that much stuff, right? But the wording is very open-ended, right? They can make representations to the government, to the Commonwealth, matters relating to the Torres Strait Islander and Aboriginal people, and then the Parliament will have the power to make laws with respect to matters relating to that, including its composition, functions, powers, and procedures. So the stuff like composition, functions, powers, and procedures, those aren't even defined in this amendment. Like there's no actual detail about what is the composition, what is the function, what is the power and procedure. So it's so open-ended and vague that you could actually just, interpret this whatever way you want it to, which is very dodgy, for a bill. If you leave things so open-ended, right? I'm not a lawyer again, but legally speaking, like that could be very easily manipulated or abused, right? There's also, so you saw from that video, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Yeah. You saw from that video about the Uluru Statement to the Heart. Sorry, this website is a little janky. This is the legislation.gov.au website. And so it talks about the Uluru Statement from the Heart, right? And they talked about like the history, the sovereignty of the land, and how like the ownership of the land never got ceded to the Crown, so the Commonwealth. Basically asking some questions about like, yeah, the history and how they want constitutional reforms to empower their people and take a rightful place in our own country. and then they'll have powers over their own destiny and their children will flourish. So they want that First Nations voice enshrined in the Constitution. So then it says here, right, Makarrata is the culmination of our agenda, coming together after a struggle. So you're like, what does that actually mean? Talks about a fair and truthful relationship with the people of Australia and a better future for their kids. They want a Makarrata Commission to supervise a process of agreement making between governments and First Nations and truth telling about our history. So that's very vague again. People reading it be like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. But they don't actually explain what that is, right? So you have to do more digging, which I have done. What is Makarrata, right? And basically, I found this document on the aph.gov, so the Parliament of Australia's website. It is the final report on the Joint Select Committee on the constitutional recognition relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people. So this was back in 2018. Let me see if I can zoom in. Back in 2018, you can actually download this as a PDF or a Word document. So I found this when I was trying to look for like what is in the Uluru Statement, because it's not just that one page. That one like paragraph I read just now, that's just like a summary. There's more information when you look into it. So here the website has the links to it, but the PDF or the Word doc is easier to read. So they talk about like First Nations voice, other proposals for constitutional change, the process of implementing a First Nations voice, and then other issues raised by the Statement of the Heart, the concept of Makarrata. And they even have a big section here about truth telling. And then some additional comments and reports. Okay, so I found the report, and you can see here in the contents page that they talk about Makarrata on page 140. So I click through. Let me just zoom it in a bit more for you guys. Okay, so the concept of Makarrata. This is not a very well known or well used word. Before, the Uluru Statement or even the voice, I never even heard of this word before. I know I live in the city, so the people and stuff are different. And there's not that many Aboriginals where I am. Okay, so they talk about the proposal for a Makarrata Commission to oversee agreement making and truth telling. So the concept of Makarrata is explored and talks about a Makarrata Commission or similar body. The committee who wrote this report said they did not hear much evidence on Makarrata. To the extent that it did hear evidence on the idea of Makarrata, they said the Yolngu word, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that tribe, that word was not well known among Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples. It also means different things to different people. So Aboriginal people themselves don't really use this word much because it's like, I think it's specific to a tribe, one tribe. And because it means different things, it's, again, open-ended. Okay, so they say the Statement from the Heart, which we saw earlier, sought a Makarrata Commission to supervise a process of agreement making between governments and First Nations and truth-telling about our history. The coming together after a struggle. So you're like, what's the struggle? The Referendum Council says Makarrata is another word for treaty or agreement making, while the Prime Minister's Indigenous Advisory Council calls it both truth-telling and agreement making. So again, kind of vague. So Makarrata is a Yolngu word from northeastern Arnhem Land and is used to describe an agreement-making process that encompasses coming to terms with the past as a foundation for a different future. Again, quite vague. So when you're trying to look, again, for more details, what is Makarrata? That question's still lingering. Okay, so let me find paragraph. Okay, so the Prime Minister's Indigenous Advisory Council provided evidence from a Yolngu leader explaining the cultural context of Makarrata. They say, before you can have a Makarrata, you have to organize yourself. Make sure you have enough men and clan group before the Makarrata can start. For the Makarrata, the leaders of 2 clans make an agreement. The Makarrata ceremony is where men get speared in the leg, which symbolizes that there is no more bad feeling between the 2 clan groups and no further intention to break the law, provided it was done in the right time, way, and with right outside clan groups as witnesses. Then they said that this present time in Australia, we're in a situation. You could say that we are in a Makarrata, where 2 systems, 2 cultures are trying to recognize each other. Sometimes the 2 systems don't quite come to that Makarrata ground to reach agreement, which makes it very hard. So they want to find pathways to resolution. Isn't it kind of crazy that Makarrata involves you spearing each other in the leg? What the frick? Okay, so I'm like, spearing in the leg, how does that reconcile things, right? So then further detail was provided by another Aboriginal representative. They said the Yolngu have to do a few things before the Makarrata happen. So some people are the organizers. Some people get authority from the leaders from the 2 different clans that want to make peace. Before the peacemaking can happen, the organizers from each clan meet. Then the leader of each clan will send a message send a messenger, who takes a message stick from their clan and returns with the reply. So they're runners who travel big distances. Australia is a very big country, so if you've got, native tribes running around, it's going to take a while. Clan leaders also send messages to consult with other related clans to become part of the peacemaking and to bear witness that the peacemaking ceremony has been conducted properly, at the right time, and in the right way. Once that happens, the leaders choose a location where the Makarrata will happen and in which season the Makarrata will occur. The organizers then sit everyone in the clan down so that everyone knows what is happening. So then they agree that they'll make this happen so there's no more bad feeling between these 2 clan groups. The warriors will start preparing. They have to make special types of spears, armbands, headbands, umera, and gather clay for body painting and make special loincloths. Then the 2 groups travel to the designated place where they intend to participate in Makarrata. The 2 groups approach each other in close formation. Then, when they get close, the formations will open up and reveal the aggrieved parties. So a victim, as well as the person who has broken the law. Then the participants will then do a totemic dance. So for different clans, it's like a different type of dance. Spears will be thrown at the dancers. These may be dodged. The Makarrata concludes with a spear being thrust through the leg of the lawbreakers. The next page. By taking the spear in the leg and having the blood flow down into the land in front of witnesses, you make the peace. So when the younger people have a Makarrata, it's under the law. It's a contract between 2 warring groups to say, the fighting is finished, it is over, it is done. No Yolngu can break that law. If someone tries to keep fighting after the Makarrata, the law will punish him or her severely, likely by death. After the Makarrata, trading, working together, and ceremony can begin again. So, Makarrata seems like a pretty violent process. I mean, you guys are spearing each other in the leg. Like, I get the symbolism, but how would you apply that to a whole country? Like, Australia, was a British colony, but they're not really fighting with the Aboriginals at the moment. Because, like, for example, this section here talks about, like, after the Makarrata, then the trading, working together, and ceremony can begin again. A lot of Australians are very, like, apologetic about what happened to the Aboriginals. I wasn't born here, but I've been here for a long time. And so I'm just speaking from observation. Like, a lot of the white Aussies are really like, oh, they feel a lot of guilt. And a lot of the schooling, like stuff they teach about what happened and the stolen generation and like, I think Rabbit Proof Fence, I think was that movie that made everybody watch. And so there's a lot of like historical stuff that gets brought up when you talk about this stuff. But the thing is, they're not really fighting with the Aboriginals. Like, we spend a lot of our taxpayer money goes to providing, services. Australia is quite a socialist country. So, we have high welfare, and Indigenous bodies get quite a lot of government support. If you, apply to uni or to some sort of tertiary school, you can check, like, if you're Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders, and you might get in a bit easier compared to just a white Aussie or a Asian Aussie or whatever, like anybody else. So, and then even when you're studying for high school, your final high school exam, you can get more points to your total score depending on your race, which is if you're Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, because they think that, like you've been aggrieved and disadvantaged. So it's kind of like the US with their, what was it? Their university admissions, where they were doing like race-based applications, and they would prefer, certain races over another, and I'm sure you guys would have heard about it already. Similar things happen here in Australia. Yeah, so I thought that was kind of crazy. I did a bit of, this is just very general research. I haven't like gone really into the weeds yet, but I thought it was kind of crazy. Like, there's a lot of things I think that are being Trojan horsed into The Voice, and they're not giving you much information. Clearly, when you go and read the information and you find it yourself, there's a lot more than just that one page or that one small paragraph that Constitution Amendment would be. So if you enshrine something like that in the Constitution that's so open-ended, it's very dangerous because the Constitution is quite hard to change, right? I think Australians need to be very careful and do their own research, read what the full document, not just that Uluru Statement from the Heart, the full actual document, what their ideas are, and see for yourselves what they're actually trying to do, right? Because things aren't what they seem. They're not really presenting their ideas very clearly or thoroughly. And when you hear Albanese talk about it, he's very like squirmy when people ask more questions or try to, get him to explain a bit more. It's very evasive. Okay, thanks for listening to that. That was a long segment. But I thought it was important that we go through that.